Good day. Today, we are going to discuss about the regulation of respiration.
Continuous respiration is produced by the rhythmic discharge of motor neurons that innervate the respiratory muscles. Breathing stop if the spinal cord is transected above the origin of phrenic nerves. Rhythmic discharge that are produced by spontaneous respiration are regulated by the alteration in arterial partial pressure carbon dioxide, partial pressure oxygen, and hydrogen ion concentration. Two neural control of breathing control system. The two neural mechanism. Number one is voluntary system, responsible for voluntary control, located in the cerebral cortex, and impulses the respiratory motor neurons via corticospinal tracts. Number two is automatic system, which is responsible for automatic control. Driven by a pacemaker cells in the medulla, impulses from these cells activate motor neuron in the cervical and thoracic spinal cord. Cervical cord is responsible for the activation of diaphragm via phrenic nerves. Thoracic spinal cord reaches the internal intercostals and the respiratory muscles. Medullary system. Main components of the respiratory control pattern generator that is responsible for automatic respiration. That is located in the medulla. Rhythmic respiration is initiated by a small group of synaptically coupled pacemaker cells in the pre-Botzinger complex on the inner side of the medulla between the nucleus ambiguus and lateral nucleus. Dorsal and ventral groups of respiratory neurons are also located in the medulla. Pontine and vagal influences. Pneumotoxic center. Area known in the medial, parabrachial, and collicular fused nucleus of the dorsolateral bones. Contains neurons that are active during inspiration and expiration. Damage to this area causes slower respiration and greater tidal volume. Pneumotoxic center plays a role in switching between inspiration and expiration. Stretching of the lungs during inspiration initiates impulses in the apparent pulmo-vagal fibers. These impulses inhibit inspiratory discharge. Regulation of respiratory activity. A rise in the partial pressure carbon dioxide or hydrogen ion concentration in the arterial blood or drop in its partial pressure oxygen increases the level of respiratory neuron activity in the medulla. Breathing patterns are sensitive to chemical in the blood through the activation of respiratory chemoreceptors. There are chemoreceptors in the carotid and aortic bodies and in the collection of cells in the medulla. Chemoreceptors respond to changes in partial pressure oxygen as well as in hydrogen ion to regulate the respiration. Stimuli affecting the respiratory center. Chemical control, carbon dioxide via cerebral spinal fluid and brain interstitial fluid. Hydrogen ion concentration. Oxygen and hydrogen ion via carotid and aortic bodies. Non-chemical control, vagal apparent from receptors in the airways and lungs. Apparence from the pons, hypothalamus, and limbic system. Apparence from proprioceptors. Apparence from baroreceptors, atrial, arterial, ventricular, and pulmonary. Chemical control of breathing. Chemical regulatory mechanism adjusts ventilation in such a way that the alveolar partial pressure carbon dioxide is normally held constant, while the excess hydrogen ion in the blood is combated, and partial pressure oxygen is rise when it is decreased to a potentially dangerous level. Receptors in the carotid and aortic are stimulated by a rise in the partial pressure carbon dioxide or hydrogen ion concentration, or decline in its partial pressure oxygen. Carotid and aortic band. Carotid bodies are positioned near a major atrial baroreceptors, the carotid sinus. There are two or more aortic bodies near the aortic arch. Each carotid and aortic body contains either of two types of cells, the type 1 and type 2 cells. Type 1 or glucose cells resemble adrenal chromaffin cells, contains catecholamines that are released upon exposures to hypoxia and cyanide. Principal transmitter appears to be dopamine, which excites the nerves ending by the way of D2 receptors. Type 2 cells, alike, each surrounds 4 to 6 type 1 cells. Function is probably sustentacular.
Type 1 and type 2 cells comes from the carotid bodies and ascends to the medulla via the carotid sinus and the glossopharyngeal nerves. Type 1 glumo cells have oxygen-sensitive potassium channels that their conductance is reduced when they are exposed to hypoxia. Chemoreceptors in the brain. So there are chemoreceptors in the brain that affects the respiratory regulation. These are medullary chemoreceptors. They are located in the ventral side of the medulla, and they mediate the hyperventilation of the lungs when the arterial partial pressure of the carbon dioxide is decreased or rather increased, and also they regulate the hydrogen concentration in the cerebrospinal fluid and as well as in the interstitial fluid in the brain. The respiratory system has ventilatory response to change in acid-base balance. So when the arterial carbon dioxide level drops below normal, the respiratory system then produces respiratory alkalinosis, which the hydrogen concentration is high. But in reverse, when the hydrogen concentration is very low, the respiratory system will produce respiratory acidosis. Ventilatory response to carbon dioxide. So normal arterial carbon dioxide is usually maintained at 40 millimeters mercury. But when the arterial carbon dioxide reaches a certain amount of level or higher than normal, ventilation is stimulated in order to excrete the excess carbon dioxide until the arterial carbon dioxide goes back to normal. And then at which time that stimulus is then turned off. So there's a condition called hypercapnia where the arterial carbon dioxide is accumulated and is abnormally high, which depresses the central nervous system, and it also includes the respiratory center. Ventilatory responses to lack of oxygen. So when the oxygen of the air inspired is decreased, respiratory minute volume will increase. That means you'll have to breathe in more air in order for your body to function well. And there is also breath holding, which is it's a voluntary inhibition of respiration. So guys, have you ever hold your breath? But in breath holding, there's also what we call a breaking point. It is where your brain commands your body to inhale more air because the carbon dioxide levels in your blood is rapidly rising and the oxygen concentration in your blood is rapidly decreasing. That's your breaking point. Now let us proceed to the non-chemical influences of respiration. So part of these non-chemical responses on the respiratory system is responses mediated by the receptors in the airways and lungs. Receptors in the airways and lungs are divided into two, myelinated, or they are innervated by myelinated and unmyelinated vagal fibers. So myelinated vagal fibers are divided into two, slowly adapting receptors and rapidly adapting receptors, while the other is also divided into two, is pulmonary and bronchial. This division is due to the location of the receptors in the lungs, whether it is in the pulmonary or it's in the bronchioles of your lungs. Did you know that you can inhale air as long as you want and your lungs may burst? But it does not because of Herring-Brewer reflex. This reflex prevents overinflating and bursting of the lungs. So this reflex have rapidly adapting receptors that respond to chemicals such as histamine. Sometimes they are called irritant receptors. So the activation of these receptors in the trachea causes bronchoconstriction, coughing, and mucus secretion, while the activation of these receptors in the lungs causes hyperapnea. So another non-chemical response of respiration is coughing and sneezing. These are reflexes that keeps irritants away in the airways and the lungs. So respiratory components of visceral reflex, there are types actually, but not really specific. So first is, the epiglottis, the small cartilage that closes the trachea. It closes in order to prevent food, vomitus, and water to go inside your lungs. And next is it's hiccup. It's a spasmodic contraction of the diaphragm and other inspiratory muscles that produce inspiration during the glottis suddenly closes. Next is yawning. This is a peculiar infectious respiratory act whose physiologic basis and significance is we're not really certain about it. Some say that this is because your brain lacks of oxygen, but no further research in this subject has been made, so we are not certain on how it affects us physiologically. So the respiratory effects of baroreceptor stimulation, although baroreceptor stimulation inhibits respiration, but they have little to no effect on physiologic importance on respiration. So the effects of sleep in respiration. Respiration is less rigorously monitored during sleep, and in normal adults, brief periods of apnea. Apnea is when you sleep and then you do not breathe normally like you used to unlike when you're awake. So in normal adults, brief periods of apnea occurs because of the decrease of carbon dioxide level in the arteries due to the decrease of stimulants. Because we're asleep, there's no stimulants. And also, during rapid eye movement sleep or REM, breathing is irregular and oxygen or carbon dioxide response is highly variable. So the respiratory effects of exercise, there are changes in the ventilation during exercise, which is shown in the graph here. Ventilation increase abruptly with the onset of exercise, which is followed by a brief pause, and then a furthermore gradual increase as you exercise. And then when you stop exercising, your ventilation decrease by a sudden abrupt pause, and then it continuously go lower. Next is this graph, figure 37/13. As you can see, here upwards is the oxygen uptake per liter per minute, and then horizontally is the workload. So as the workload increases, oxygen uptake also increase, and blood lactate also increase. So lactate is like an acid that makes one feel tired. And so when you reach a maximal workload, your oxygen uptake goes to a plateau. During exercise, there are also changes in the muscle tissue. So when you exercise, there is a greater increase of blood flow because your muscles use more oxygen, and then more carbon dioxide is produced and your temperature rises.